Thank you so much for joining us for CBN Newswatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, the battle over mask mandates in school as some students were suspended in Virginia even after the governor issues an executive order making them optional. And voters in the liberal city of San Francisco recall 3 members of the school board for putting progressive politics over the needs of children. Should the United States take economic actions against Russia to prevent Vladimir Putin from invading Ukraine? That's the debate right now in Washington Plus.
This transgender athlete is breaking records in collegiate women's swimming, but fears from female athletes across the country are now growing.
No matter how much testosterone suppression drugs Leah may take, Leah will always be swimming in a man's body. And this is just blatantly unfair.
And later, it's an agricultural event honoring God for his great harvest.
God sends the rain on the righteous and the unrighteous, it says. So I can't say that I couldn't be a farmer without God, but I sure couldn't be the farmer that I want to be without God, and I sure wouldn't have that assurance that he's taking care of us no matter what.
We'll have more on the Global Agriculture Day of Prayer. All these stories and more are coming up next from the CBN Newsroom.
This is CBN Newswatch.
And we begin with the debate over masks in schools. Here in Virginia, it has become a major focus. Students in one school were suspended for not wearing masks in schools after a judge ruled mask mandates can remain. His ruling came after Governor Glenn Youngkin's executive order making masks optional. Tara Mergener reports from Loudoun County on the ongoing tug of war over masks and Virginia's new bill to end mandates.
Virginia's House and Senate approved a bill ending school mask mandates, but the default date for new laws to go into effect is July 1. So Governor Youngkin is set to send the bill back to the House to add an emergency clause, making it effective immediately. We wanted to give you a behind-the-scenes look of what parents and students of one school system had to encounter to get to this point.
Hi, my name is Madeline, and I like running. My name is Brayden, and I like to do sports. My name is Joshua, and I like my family.
What 7-year-old Joshua, 10-year-old Brayden, and 13-year-old Madeline don't like is being suspended, along with a dire warning Madeline says came from her principal.
They said it will go on my record, and they said it could affect when I go to college.
These Loudoun County students are among 29 who showed up unmasked after Virginia's new governor nixed mask mandates in schools last month. Welcome news to the Platts, who say masks give Madeline headaches, make it hard for Brayden to understand his teachers, and aggravate Joshua's breathing.
It made my asthma worse.
What was that like?
It made me not feel like I was breathing.
They don't talk about anxiety, they don't talk about health, they don't talk about the long-term impact of what this does to children.
But the relief from Youngkin's announcement didn't last long. The siblings returning to school only to learn they're banned from their classrooms.
They took us to the library and kept us in there for 7 hours. Whenever a class came in, they told the class not to talk to us.
Isolated from their masked peers.
We were even being supervised. It was just us in this little conference room in the back of the office.
And left to learn on their own.
It's quarter 3, we're learning new things. Like, I have to watch YouTube tutorials.
Loudoun is among dozens of Virginia school districts still enforcing mask mandates.
How do they become the executive branch of the law?
We're like, when can they come for their in-person education that they're entitled to by the Virginia state law? And all they tell them, they're like, as soon as they put the mask on.
These school systems could be on shaky legal ground, according to constitutional expert Brad Jacob.
The Constitution says that the government, including the public schools, may not deny the equal protection of the laws. And so you have to make sure as a school that you are treating the students equally, that they are all getting the same opportunities.
Lisa Harcrow says not only is Loudoun going against the governor's edict, but in her son's case, doctor's orders.
Right now they're stating that if they approve one medical exemption, that they're going to start having to approve them all.
And some parents insist school officials are breaking their own rules. For example, invited guests have been seen partially or unmasked during the same time frame students were getting suspended. LCPS denied our request for an interview and emailed us this statement saying, in part, because this issue is currently the subject of litigation, it would be inappropriate for the superintendent to comment. Meanwhile, the Platts and others now on the outside looking in.
As parents, what's going on, it's fundamentally and lawfully wrong.
Tara Mergener, CBN News.
A major political development in one of the most liberal cities in the country. Voters in San Francisco recalled 3 members of the city's school board Tuesday. As critics said, the board put progressive politics over the needs of children during the pandemic, dealing with issues like renaming schools named for historical figures like George Washington and Abraham Lincoln because they were linked to slavery and other injustices. That plan was scrapped after an uproar, but voters felt the board needed to spend time working on the make for the schools to make schools safer for children to get back in class.
I saw a lot of kids struggling, doing school from home, and I saw the school board prioritize renaming schools over getting kids back into school.
They should have been focused on reopening schools like most districts were thinking about and doing.
Board members defended their actions during the pandemic, but now the mayor will appoint new members to take those board members' place. Want to turn now to the crisis with Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin claims he's pulling back troops from Ukraine's border, but U.S. intelligence experts are not buying it. So should President Biden invoke economic sanctions now before war breaks out? If he waits, it might be too late. Charlene Aaron is on the story.
Russian officials claim they're pulling back troops and are open to more talks. But Tuesday, President Biden said there's no indication Russia is backing off.
We have not yet verified the Russian military units are returning to their home bases.
The president warning Russia that the U.S. is ready to respond with sanctions and defend NATO territory.
If Russia attacks Ukraine, it'll be met with overwhelming international condemnation. The world will not forget that Russia chose needless death and destruction.
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and other senators say the U.S. should impose sanctions on Russia now.
I hope the administration is not going to wait until after an incursion to turn the screws and put some real sanctions on the Russians. At that point, arguably, it's a little too late.
President warning Americans that economic sanctions against Russia will have an impact here at home.
I will not pretend this will be painless. There could be impact on our energy prices. So we are taking active steps to alleviate the pressure on our own energy markets and offset raising prices.
He's also sending a message to the Russian people.
To the citizens of Russia, you are not our enemy. And I do not believe you want a bloody, destructive war against Ukraine.
Several hundred soldiers from the 101st Airborne and Fort Campbell are on their way to Eastern Europe as part of the U.S. effort to support NATO allies. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Now on to the talks with Iran over its nuclear program, as it appears the so-called final round of negotiations could be stalling out. An Iran National Security Council member says American negotiators seem unwilling to accept Tehran's terms. 2 former members of the Trump administration tell CBN News that although the U.S. has lost leverage, it is not too late to get things back on track. Here's Caitlin Burke with this story.
Officials believe Iran is only weeks away from having enough fuel to build a nuclear weapon, something the Biden administration blames on former President Donald Trump.
Iran's increased capability and capacity, their aggressive actions that they have taken through proxy wars around the world would be happening if the former president had not recklessly pulled out of the nuclear deal.
But Len Khodorkovsky, a former senior advisor to Trump's Iran envoy, says their maximum pressure campaign did exactly what it was meant to.
Iran was down to about $4 billion in cash reserves when the Biden administration came to office. That was the result of the sanctions and the pressure of the maximum pressure campaign. Its proxies around the region were at the weakest point ever, as was the regime.
Khodorkovsky says all that changed was an easing of sanctions after Biden took office,
which sent the wrong signal to the Iranian regime. and unleashed their sprint to where they are right now. So the Biden administration gave the Iranian regime the space it needed, the cover it needed to get to where they are and have much greater leverage, of which they had really none when the administration started.
While current thinking is that re-entering a nuclear deal is the only way to prevent a nuclear Iran, Khodorkovsky and other former Trump administration officials point to alternative options.
I think the only way to reverse the progress that the Iranian regime has made to date is to turn maximum pressure to excruciating pressure. That will send exactly the right message as to what we will find acceptable.
Eli Kohanim, former deputy special envoy to combat anti-Semitism, says Iran has a track record of cheating on its deals with the U.S., and a diplomatic track may no longer be the answer.
Many voices argue that the United States should actually show a very strong military resolve to the Iranians and let them understand that there are red lines that they cannot cross, and that if the Iranians are not willing to let go of their desire to achieve a nuclear weapons state, that there would be military consequences to that decision-making.
When the U.S. re-entered negotiations with Iran, President Biden promised that a new deal would be longer and stronger than the original. Khodorkovsky calls the deal currently on the table weaker and shorter. Republicans vow that they will block any final agreement if the administration chooses to send it to Congress, but Democrats maintain they won't have the votes. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Coming up, this transgender athlete is a part of collegiate women's swimming and is now causing fears with other athletes, women around the world. See why next. A transgender athlete is shaking up collegiate women's swimming and heightening the fears of female athletes across the country. Leah Thomas formerly competed as a male for the University of Pennsylvania, but is now swimming as a woman and breaking records. Senior National Affairs correspondent Heather Salles reports.
As a male athlete, Will Thomas ranked 462 in the NCAA over 3 seasons on the University of Pennsylvania swim team. Now, competing as a female, Leah Thomas has set multiple program records, ranks #1, and has qualified for the NCAA championships in March.
I love to compete, and I just love to see how fast I can go.
16 of Thomas's teammates at the University of Pennsylvania are protesting. They're saying Thomas holds an unfair advantage and should not be allowed to compete against women. Joining them, a few veterans of the swim community, like 30-year referee Cynthia Millen, who has resigned over the situation.
No matter how much testosterone suppression drugs Leah may take, Leah will always be swimming in a man's body. And this is just blatantly unfair. Men will always swim 8 to 12% faster than women. They have larger lung capacity. They have larger skeleton.
The NCAA, however, has ruled Thomas can compete in the championships, refusing to adopt a new USA swimming rule that requires 3 years of suppressed testosterone that would have disqualified Thomas. Thomas began hormone therapy in May of 2019.
I do think that the consequence of allowing Leah to compete at the NCAA championships compromises more than one individual, the person that comes second to Leah. It's the person who doesn't advance into the final 8 because Leah is in competition. It's the athlete that who doesn't advance to the top 16, which is also a point-scoring position.
The trans athlete debate appears to be picking up steam as these real-life consequences sink in. South Dakota is now the 10th state with a law officially protecting female athletes. Governor Kristi Noem says it's about Title IX and women's rights.
Now, there's many different competitions where biological sex isn't that big of a deal, and we don't make accommodations for it in debate competitions or academic speech competitions. But in athletics, it does matter.
It's really just taking a toll on just people's love for the sport in general.
And more female athletes are speaking out. Iowa high school track star Ainsley Erzin is headed for the University of Arkansas and wrote an op-ed in the Des Moines Register, calling on state officials to protect girls' sports.
Unfortunately, if we allow more trans athletes to compete in women's sports, that puts the results way out of female athletes' control.
For now, all eyes remain on Thomas, who, after dominating the women's 200 and 500 freestyle this season, will compete in next month's NCAA championships. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Still ahead, a gathering of farmers to honor God and give thanks for their harvest. We'll share more about this story when we come back. Stay with us. Thousands of farmers will gather in Kentucky this Friday for the Global Agricultural Day of Prayer. The prayer is a way to honor God and give thanks for their harvest. More than 1 million farmers, along with others in the agricultural industry, are taking part in the prayer gathering. Wendy Griffith spoke with Don and Jody Lamb of Lamb Farms. They're among the many guest speakers at this year's event.
Don and Jody, welcome to the show. Don, you are a second-generation farmer in Lebanon, Indiana, and owner of Lamb Farms. You grow wheat, a little bit of wheat, you said, corn and soy, and your motto is growing food, family, and faith. Tell me a little bit about what you all do at Lamb's Farm.
Well, we're mainly a grain farm, corn, soybeans, wheat, like I said. And my dad started the farm back in the early 60s. He grew up in Indianapolis and actually rented his first farm through the mail from Italy. We're not maybe the common farm that's passed down through many generations, but my dad's done just such a great job of starting the farm and then passing it on to my brother and I, and now we're into our third generation of our children.
What role does your faith play in your ability to be a successful farmer?
God sends the rain on the righteous and the unrighteous, it says. So I can't say that I couldn't be a farmer without God, but I sure couldn't be the farmer that I want to be without God, and I sure wouldn't have that assurance that He's taking care of us no matter what. And in farming, there's a lot of uncertainties, and for me, having God at the center of our farm is a big part of that.
Tell me about some of the work you do there, Jody.
Mainly, I probably play more of a support role for Don and definitely make sure that he's fed well and encouraged and come alongside however we can.
You know, we think about the farmers feed us, but somebody's got to feed the farmers, and that is an important role. So,
Amen.
Jody,
very important.
Thank you so much for doing that. All right. So you guys will be attending the Global Agriculture Day of Prayer on February 18th in Louisville, Kentucky. Don, why is it important for farmers to gather together and to pray?
Agriculture and the gospel have always had a really great link. There's so much crossover just between the harvest and taking care of the fields and with the gospel message. And so it's really very natural that farmers would be connected to God and through that connected to prayer.
Amen. And Jody, I understand that you both have been asked to pray at this event. What will be your focus? Tell me about that.
Well, we've been asked to focus in on marriages for farmers and those in agriculture and the need to pray specifically for our marriages.
What would you say are some of the biggest challenges for farming couples, and what will you specifically be praying about?
Farmers are unique in that Don will always say that, we are, a very small percentage of what goes on in the world. I don't know what the percentage is, 1%, 2% are farmers now. And so I think as I can speak as a farmer's wife, that a lot of times we feel somewhat alone. And so I'm excited and looking forward to the opportunity to come together as spouses, as wives of farmers, just to pray together for what God intends for us to be doing as we support and love one another, as we hopefully are an example to the world of what God intends in marriages. But we need to come before Him for that strength, for sure.
Amen. That's awesome. Don, tell me about the prayer challenge, the PTL challenge that's going out right now to the world.
The PTL challenge is really just to start praying and then to text some people that you know of and then to live out this prayer time together. And that can go with technology. We're talking by Zoom right now to you clear across the country. But boy, the whole world will be involved and can be involved in this prayer event. And so that's what it's about, is just getting as many people around the globe involved in praying and glorifying God through agriculture.
So why should people attend this event or watch it online?
Well, I think it'll be inspirational. You know, Angus Buchan will be one of the speakers, and if anybody's seen the movie Faith Like Potatoes, the story of him in South Africa and the way he became more of an evangelist. And when I was asked to be a part of this movement, it was kind of a no-brainer because it reminded me specifically of that. Okay, let's get the farmers together and let's pray, and let's do it big. You know, let's try to get a lot of farmers together and pray. And so, you know, to me, that's just a great way to watch God work. And then Franklin Graham will be a speaker by video as well. And we've got a former Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue, who's going to pray with us. And then we've got some music from Sam Smith, who's from Kentucky. We're gonna support the tornado victims that the bad tornado went through Kentucky there a few months ago, and Samaritan's Purse efforts in that. So there's just some really great things that are going to come together in a really short period of time, but it's a way that I think God can really be glorified.
So if you're a farmer or you support farmers or you feed farmers or you just love farmers, you need to get to Freedom Hall. That's in Louisville, Kentucky, 7:30 a.m. About 12,000 people can fit into this building, I'm told. So the goal is to pack it out. Is that right?
Yep. That's right. That's the goal.
And if you can't get there in person, you can watch online at prayingfarmers.com. Don and Jody Lamb, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Coming up, we've got a Wednesday word for you. Stay with us. Time now for your Wednesday word, and the word I will share is miracle. Know this: in your need for a miracle, God speaks a miracle word. He may then require you to wait and to work while you wait for the wonder of that miracle to come to pass. The world says you got to see it to believe it, but God says with faith, you've got to believe it before you actually see it. With that word, make today a wonderful Wednesday. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN Newswatch. You can always find more of our programs on the CBN News Channel or online at any time, cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you can see here today. Email us, newswatch@cbn.com. And of course, you can always reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope to see you right back here same time tomorrow. Goodbye. God bless.